Welcome, beauties, beasts, living, dead, and undecided. I am DF, your ghost host for Beauties and Beasts, the podcast for all things beautiful and beastly. Okay, I got that out of my system. Come on, I gotta do an evil laugh every Halloween or 4th of July or so. What, you don't do an evil laugh on the 4th of July? Just me? Huh. Anyway, it's that time of year again to be getting out those old classic horror movies and binge watching them up until past midnight, like 4 a.m. if you're me. Whether you feel like getting scared out of your wits despite your better judgment and staying up all night with nightmares, or just laughing at how cheesy some of them are, because some horror movies are really cheesy, like don't go in that room, don't run upstairs, or just stop screaming and just keep running. Yeah, all the same, horror movies are still fun. And of course, at this time of year, we see a lot of beasts out trick-or-treating or at the costume parties. And some who are truly monstrous, like if you're the Joker. Yeah, if you're going to see the Joker in the movies, don't go in masks or face paint because they will turn you away. Trust me, I work at a movie theater, I know. And will especially turn you away if you're under 17 and not carrying an ID, if you look 17. And then there are some beasts who are just misunderstood creatures just looking for love, which was a common theme in the classic horror genre of a monster seeking companionship, aka a bride. From King Kong to Creature of the Black Lagoon to Phantom of the Opera. I call this the one-sided Beauty and the Beast tale. And this is kind of a more tragic route with the trope. It does not end happily for the beast most of the time. Some beasts just don't get the girl. And we're going to talk about one of those one-sided Beauty and the Beast tropes. And probably the best horror movie sequel ever, if not the best sequel ever, Bride of Frankenstein. We all know it's a tale as old as time, 'cause we've heard it over and over again. And speaking of Halloween, it's not too late to buy Halloween merch from my Redbubble page, Disney Fanatic 23. Just click the link in the description below or above if you're listening on PodBean. Remember that all proceeds from merchandise and patron donations go to funding my podcast and getting new audio equipment, including soundproofing for my new closet and a new webcam. If you see in my YouTube channel, yeah, my webcam sucks. And here's a special shout out to my $5 plus patrons, Anime Guy 1101 and TyrannosaurusVenom. You guys have been patrons for a year now, and I really thank you for supporting me for this long. And if you'd like to become a patron and support this podcast on a monthly basis, all you have to do is pledge at least $1 a month. That's just $12 a year, which is not really that much. And depending on which tier you applied for, you can get certain perks such as access to bonus episodes, previews, early access to new episodes, access to patron-only live streams, and complimentary merchandise. Just click the green button on the right-hand corner of the screen, or if you're listening on YouTube, click the link in the description below. So, Bride of Frankenstein, released in 1935, was James Whale's sequel to his film adaptation of Frankenstein in 1931. Ironically, this sequel contains more of the book that it was based on than the first movie did. The book Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, was written by Mary Shelley in 1816. If you're one of my $5 plus patrons and you heard my review on the book, you will know the origins of this story. If you'd like to hear my review on Frankenstein, then pledge at least $5 a month to gain access to that episode. So Bride of Frankenstein opens up with Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and Mary Shelley in the Villa Diodati in Switzerland on a dark and stormy night. The same circumstances in which the real Mary Shelley had come up with the idea for her book Frankenstein. Now, if you hadn't seen James Whale's first Frankenstein movie, don't worry, because Byron sums it up pretty good. It has almost nothing to do with the book. Just to sum it up, Dr. Henry Frankenstein... Oh, wait, isn't it Victor Frankenstein? I could have sworn it was Victor. Oh yeah, it's Victor in the book, but Henry in the movie. I guess Universal didn't like the name Victor? So, Henry Frankenstein creates a living being from an assortment of dead body parts and revives them using electricity from lightning. Now, the whole electricity reviving thing was all James Whale's idea, not Shelley's, as in the book it does not really specify how the monster was brought to life, as Victor Frankenstein had not wanted his experiment to be repeated. And then the newly revived monster, played by Boris Karloff, who would later go on to voice the Grinch, yeah, wrap your head around that, the Grinch and the Frankenstein's monster being the same person. He wanders around the village, all confused, accidentally drowns a girl, and is chased by a mob up to a windmill, which catches fire. Henry Frankenstein survives this ordeal, but the monster perishes. Or so we think, as Mary Shelley says. The story continues, with Henry Frankenstein recovering from the fire and the fall from the windmill. He is visited by his old philosophy professor, Dr. Pretorius. That's the way the servant Minnie says it. I like the way she says it. Dr. Pretorius has done his own little life experiments. And by little, I mean really little. He has created these miniature living people that he keeps in bottles. It's a pretty twisted menagerie. I mean, keeping all those people in bottles? Sheesh, this guy has more of a god complex than Frankenstein. And Dr. Pretorius proposes they continue Frankenstein's experiments and create a woman, an Eve for the Adam, the monster's mate. Of course, Frankenstein by now has a little more sense. He's actually learned something from the previous movie, and he refuses to create another monster. Like, he's already messed with the forces of nature enough. So meanwhile, the monster has been roaming around the countryside trying to find shelter because, he is still relatively new to the world and has no idea what to do, and everywhere he goes, people are screaming at him and running, and there's even the shepherdess that he scares, and then she falls into the river and he tries to pull her out, but she's still freaking out. And he comes across this cottage where a blind hermit lives, and this blind hermit, of course because he's blind, does not know that he is a monster, just think that he's a mute man in need of help. And the blind hermit, being lonely himself, helps the monster. Honestly, this is the real Beauty and the Beast relationship in this movie, albeit a platonic one. And while it is a prime example of the all-knowing blind guy stereotype, which has been a criticism, I understand it's actually a negative stereotype, putting pressure on actually blind people to be all-knowing and all-wise. But you can't help but just be touched by the friendship between the blind hermit and the monster. It's so beautiful. It takes a bit from the book, where the monster in that one had tried and failed to befriend a blind man, where in the film, he is successful in befriending him. So in their time together, the hermit teaches the monster to speak, such as, fired, bad. Yeah, that is where it came from, the movie, not the book. And they eat together, and the hermit plays violin, which the monster loves. And it's so sweet until some hunters come along, recognize the monster, and ruin everything. Resulting in the monster accidentally burning down the hermit's house. And the hermit's like, what's going on? Why are you trying to hurt my friend? It's so sad. Yet the monster in the movie may not be as intelligent as he is in the book, or eloquent I should say, but his childlike confusion is just enough to make you sympathize. I mean, we were all children at some point who had gotten lost and have no idea where to go or how the world works. We were all that monster at one point, and we just lash out at things we don't understand. All his killings in these two movies are accidental or in self-defense. And people scream at him and just judge him too quickly. So it's no wonder that the monster, in his loneliness, just wants a companion, a friend. I mean, he didn't ask to be created. All he wants is a friend. Can someone give this guy a hug, please? Oh gosh. The real monster in this movie is society, to be honest. Or Dr. Pretorius, you could say. Speaking of which, the monster runs into Dr. Pretorius, who says that he can make him a woman friend like him. And of course the monster agrees to this because he thinks if he has a friend who is like him, that friend won't run away or scream. And this is, I think, inspiration from a moment in the book when the monster had ordered Victor Frankenstein to make him a mate. And in return, he would leave the human race alone. But Victor, while he was in the middle of creating a bride, he panicked, thinking that maybe the bride wouldn't like him, or if they were able to reproduce, more monsters would be running around, and the ideas disgusted him so much that he ended up destroying the bride before it was finished. Whereas in the movie, they follow through on this second experiment, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So Dr. Pretorius persuades a monster to kidnap Henry's wife Elizabeth as collateral for Frankenstein to help them in this experiment. So, against Frankenstein's better judgment, and also he can save Elizabeth, he helps to create the bride. And she is created, and she is the exact same actress as Mary Shelley. I have this conspiracy theory that Shelley was actually the bride all along. It would explain a lot. Now the bride is all confused and cat-like, and she screams at the sight of the monster. In fairness, this woman didn't ask to be created either, and while you can make a person, you can't make that person fall in love with you, necessarily. Oh wait, you can't make a person! That was the whole point of the story! So, angry Boris Karloff lets Henry run off with Elizabeth, cries, "We belong dead!" and using the electrical equipment, blows the castle to smithereens, taking the newly made bride and Dr. Pretorius along with him. I'm sorry, this movie makes me cry more than frightens me. Oh gosh, this is not a horror movie, this is a tragedy! Poor monster, he just wanted a buddy. So let's talk about the morals of the story. Whether you are a beauty or a beast, outside or inside, you can't just make somebody fall in love with you. And you can't just make a perfect mate either. Oh yeah, and don't play God and take responsibility for your actions stuff. But that poor monster wasn't necessarily seeking a wife, he was just seeking a friend. And he had one before prejudice tore them apart. Also goes to show you that even those who are like you won't necessarily like you either. So opposites don't always attract, and same doesn't always attract either. I think the way that James Whale presented the idea of a bride made for the monster, and I say the monster, I know that Frankenstein is a scientist, but you could argue that because the monster is Frankenstein's son, technically, he can still have the name Frankenstein. But I think this was what Shelley probably would have had in mind if a mate had been created. But keep in mind, in the book, Frankenstein had by this time already learned not to repeat his experiment, and so that was probably why in this movie he needed another egotistical scientist to push him to do it again. And he was the one who eventually perished because of it. I still wish that one of these days we'd have a movie or a story where Frankenstein's monster gets a happy ending, because this guy needs some love. Oh wait, new conspiracy theory. The monster survived the explosion, met a vampire named Lily, and then became Herman Munster, and then they had a werewolf baby. Yeah, I'll go with that. That makes me happy. So, if you all like horror movies, especially the classic movie monsters, I will talk more about them and their little romantic endeavors in my Halloween live stream on October 28th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this live stream will be open to all people on PodBean. All you have to do is download the PodBean app to join. It's completely free. Come with your questions, any voice requests, or if you just want me to sing a couple lines to a song, or just answer questions about the podcast or any other horror movies. And if you'd like to make a donation, you can do it in the live stream. And the next episode after that, which will be released on November 7th, earlier for patrons, in honor of the sequel coming out in about a month from now, the Disney movie Frozen, a sisterly Beauty and the Beast story. And you will see what I mean. For now, enjoy trick-or-treating, and treat me by becoming a patron today, so I don't come and trick you.